For a notification in the chat feed if we are live. Yes, Chairman, you're live. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to this Performance Governance and Audit Committee meeting, which is our first virtual meeting. Today, Thursday, 25th of June, 2020. My name is Councillor Mrs. Elaine Bamford, and I'm the chairman of this committee. This is Malden District Council's first remote meeting of this committee, held under new regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April in response to the COVID-19 situation. There are just a few housekeeping issues to run through, including our new working practices, which have been implemented due to the pandemic, and the etiquette for this meeting. First of all, please could I ask everyone present in this meeting to ensure your microphone remains muted and your video feed off when not addressing the committee. This will reduce background noises and avoid any unintentional disturbances. This meeting will be hosted remotely via conferencing software, which allows members of the public to virtually attend the meeting whilst being able to protect themselves and others and observe the government's lockdown measures. We may encounter some glitches this afternoon, so I hope that everyone will bear with us as we get used to this new way of working. We are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. Members and officers during each item, please use the chat function of the meeting to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Members are reminded that apart from indicating you wish to speak or that you have to leave the meeting, the chat function should not be used for questions or any other purpose. Members, the process this afternoon will obviously be different, and for some items I may invite each member to speak in turn. Therefore, I would encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible, please. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please ensure you reference a page or paragraph number. Could I also ensure that everyone is directly connected to a power supply so that nobody drops out due to short battery life? And lastly, if members need to leave the meeting at any point, please do make this known and use the chat function to signify that you need to leave the meeting. Now, if I may ask officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Paul Dodson.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Paul Dodson, Director of Strategy, Performance and Governance.
Thank you. Miss Donnelly. Do we have Miss Donnelly from video? No. Mr. Holmes.
Good afternoon, members. Richard Holmes, Director of Service Delivery.
Miss Cheryl Hughes.
Good afternoon, members. Cheryl Hughes, Programme Performance and Governance Manager.
Thank you, Cheryl. Mr. Hulley.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Grant Hulley. I'm the lead ICT specialist.
Thank you, Grant. Mr. Chris Leslie.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Leslie, Director of Resources.
Thank you, Chris. And lastly, Berna Casey, who's going to help me with the meeting.
Good afternoon, members. Yes, Berna, clerk to the meeting this afternoon. Thank you.
Have we got any other members present, Berna? Any other officers? Sorry, officers. We've got any other officers present?
I don't believe so, not at the moment. I just need to see if I can contact Miss Donnelly. Thank you.
Yes,
Chair.
Thank you. So, Berna, can you now carry out a roll call of members to confirm who is in attendance? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bamford.
Obviously, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor B.S. Beale. We know Councillor Beale is here, so I'm just going to say yes. Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Can you speak up, Brian?
Hello, Brian.
speaking.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Channer.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Councillor Durham.
Present.
Councillor Fluker.
Present.
Councillor Howard.
Present.
Councillor Jarvis.
Present.
Councillor Nunn.
Yes, here, Berna.
Councillor Skeens.
I'm here. Yeah. Hi.
Stamp.
Councillor Stamp's here, yes, Berna.
Thank you. Councillor Stilts.
Yes, Berna, I'm present.
Councillor Swain.
No, present.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson.
Present, thank you, Berna.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Berna. Have we got apologies for absence?
Yes, we've had two from Councillor Harker and Councillor Keys.
Thank you. Now, members, before we move to consider the minutes at item 3, I'd like to clarify that the audits on workforce management and community safety will form part of the agenda for our next committee on the 30th of July. And I also now would like to hand over to the Director of Resources, who's going to give us a verbal update on the audit of the statement of accounts.
I'll throw you back. Yeah, I'm just going to make this.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The draft statement of accounts was published on the 31st of May, ahead of this year's deadline, which is the 31st of August this year, due to COVID-19. The external audit commenced on the 1st of June and is currently ongoing. The deadline to have the audited set of accounts finalised this year is the 30th of November. Currently, the audit is progressing well, with the audit team communicating with the council staff via Microsoft Teams and other methods remotely on a daily basis. Outstanding audit requests are listed, and that schedule is maintained and reviewed regularly. There are no significant slippages or backlogs at this time, with all original audit queries having been replied to. Auditors are sampling at this moment, which means they are selecting samples from a list of, for example, invoices. They may pick invoices to sample, and they are currently going through their selection process of those, and they will be requesting more information from council officers soon, so they can conduct those sample tests. They currently have 3 more weeks to go on site, as it were, on virtual site, until the 10th of July, and they will do some follow-up work after that, with a view to having everything finalised towards the end of July. Audit have confirmed that they are still on schedule to do this currently, and obviously we're reviewing that on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update. We won't have questions on that, members. So I want to move on to the minutes now of the 27th of February, which I hope you will have looked at. So it's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of February 2020, found on pages 5 to 16, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now. Thank you.
Seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you. Who was that, Berna? Who seconded?
I think Councillor Durham might have been first, or Councillor Jarvis. I've seconded as well, but I think they came in before me.
Thank you. So does any member wish to raise any matter of accuracy? Please use the chat function and I'll invite you to speak. Berna, is there anyone on the chat function questioning the accuracy?
No, Chairman, not of the minutes.
So are we happy, members, to take the vote en masse rather than going through the individual pages? If everyone's happy with the minutes?
Agreed. Happy to do that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Thank you. So we'll go on to declarations of interest. and I'll read this out. I'm sorry that I'm not looking at the screen because I'm having to look at another screen to read it out. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having in regard to paragraphs 6 to 8, inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the needs arise throughout the meeting. If any member has an interest to declare, please use the chat function now to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. Berna, have we got any members wishing to declare an interest, please?
I do, Madam Chairman.
Well, there's nobody in the chat feed, Madam Chairman.
Sorry, I forgot to put. Sorry,
no, that's okay. Councillor Mrs. Channer is now in the chat.
Sorry, I forgot to press the arrow.
No problem.
Sorry. Yes, please, Madam Chairman. I'm going to be declaring non-pecuniary as a member of Essex County Council, because within the reports there is mention of Essex County Council. Certainly in the performance one, it refers to health issues and primary schools, and Essex County Council has been named in those. So therefore, any areas within any of the reports which might relate in any way or remit of County Council, I'm declaring that non-pecuniary.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Anyone else wish to declare an interest in any of the items on the agenda?
Councillor Durham has indicated he'd like to.
Go ahead, Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chairman. Also, as a member of Essex County Council, a non-pecuniary interest for items relating to the County Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. Anyone else?
Nobody else, Chairman,
in
the chat feed. Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is 5, public participation. And I can advise that we've not received any submissions from members of the public. So the next item is item 6, the internal audit reports. Now, have we got Miss Donnelly now in attendance?
Excuse me, Chair. I've been trying to use the chat function, Councillor Bamford, and it hasn't worked. I actually do have a question as a member of the public, please.
Okay, fine. Can you use the chat function now, Councillor Morris?
I've been trying to use it. I've got one. I did ask to use a question on it earlier, but since then I haven't been able to reuse it. For some reason, it's just I can type. I can't.
Right. Does your question relate to any item on the agenda? Because
item 7.
You are a councillor in this meeting, so
I'm a member of the public. I'm asking this as a member of the public, and it's item 7.
Item 7.
Yeah.
Which is the corporate performance.
Yes.
All right. So you want to raise an item as a member of the public, not as a councillor, because you could have asked at the beginning of the meeting if you wanted to speak as a councillor.
I did put that I had a question. I am a little bit, how can I put it, reticent about asking questions as a councillor because I'm usually ignored. So,
well, I can assure you, Councillor Morris, that as a councillor on Malden District Council with this committee, you would not have been denied that opportunity as a councillor. But you haven't done that. So if you want to raise something in public participation that relates to an item on the agenda, then please do so now.
Apologies, Chairman, but the procedure does require advance notification via the Microsoft form process, but obviously that's at chairman's discretion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I understand that. I understand that, but I think we will let Councillor Morris speak.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bamford. And I'd just like to say that I do have respect for yourself. You've been very kind. You're a very good chair, so you get the respect you deserve. I'd just like to point out that I believe that this council is failing some small and medium-sized businesses in the current COVID-19 crisis by not giving them enough information on grants or coming forward with the grants in time to save employment and businesses at this time. I've been contacted by a few small businesses. Are we going to be able to help them adequately? Myself as a councillor, I'm struggling to get any answers whatsoever from my own council. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Councillor Morris. We will pass that on. So we're moving on to then item 6 on the agenda, which is internal audit reports. Could we ask Bernard, have we got Miss Donnelly now in attendance?
We're just checking, Chairman. She has been resent the invite, and we're just seeing if she's managed to actually get into the meeting. She had no problem with the agenda meeting, so I'm not quite sure. I'm just checking the link again, and I will be back to you in.
Well, I'm just wondering if we, in that case, we should move on to item 7, end of year review of corporate performance, until Miss Donnelly arrives, because otherwise, if we have questions, she's not going to be available to answer them. If members are happy, I think we will do that until Miss Donnelly arrives. So we're going on to. Is that okay? Sorry.
Yes. Yes. Agreed.
Agreed. So we go on to item 7, which is the end of year review of corporate performance. In a moment, I'll call on the officer to present this item. Members, just to remind you, if you wish to speak, please make this known using the chat function, and then we'll come to you in turn. So Miss Cheryl Hughes will present the report. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, members. I'm just going to load the presentation. Bear with me.
Sorry to put you on the spot, because it's come a bit earlier in the agenda than we had anticipated.
It's okay. Okay, so that should now be visible on the screen. So the report presented is our first end of year view of corporate performance against the corporate plan, which obviously runs till 2022. The strategic theme lead team are currently reviewing the measures associated with these corporate outcomes and looking at which need to be revised into 2021 in light of recent challenges and developments that are brought about from the COVID crisis. Overall, the performance against the allocated measures for 1920 has been good, but the header report draws attention to specific areas for delivery concern, which I will now run through. Appendix A provides an overall strategic picture for each of the thematic areas, and these are available at slides 4, which is the corporate community performance.
Yeah, thank you.
Slides 10, which is the place performance, and slides 19, which is prosperity. The pages that then sit after each of those headline pages break down the specific measurements and supporting work plans that back up delivery of the measures. So, for example, pages 4 to 19 cover everything to do with the community theme within the corporate plan. The commentary on the outcomes pages provides context around how the measures have performed to give an overview for all corporate outcomes. So I'm going to take you now to slide 5, which is the community performance headline view. And this is measure F, which is effective engagement to support strong and resilient communities. This is the first measure that members' attention is drawn to in terms of issues around delivery. The commentary text explains about the Better Care Fund and payment of DFGs and how they've been impacted by COVID. But the data then sitting behind this is further shown on slide 7 here at the bottom. So that explains why for that particular measure we're flagging concerns in terms of delivery. I'll then take you to the place strategic performance, in which there are 3 themes where measures have been flagged. So these are D, improved air quality, F, sound and tested environmentally friendly initiatives, and J, which is section 106 planning agreements being effectively discharged. So specifically for improved air quality, there has been a delay to the delivery of the strategy, although this is now scheduled to a further future committee date. For the sound and tested environmentally friendly initiatives, there is a climate change strategy due, but this has been reprioritised due to officer work on COVID-19. And then for Measure J, Section 106 planning agreements, there's a lot of site closures due to COVID, so that again has impacted on the delivery there. There's further information to explain again why those measures are tracking as they are in slides 15, 16 and 17, which give more detail on the plans and where the targets have or haven't been met underneath those measures. If I take you now to prosperity, where we have one measure that sits outside of where we'd expect delivery. So this is Measure C, rural business and diversification supported. There has been a change of scope for this particular measure because an SPD was required for Bradwell but is no longer required. And also there are some details around the rural business district delay and being behind schedule there, which has impacted on this delivery. So further detail for this outcome is available further down the slides in the outcomes in the supporting plans. So if I just take you to slide 23, so we're looking at Measure C, rural and coastal businesses. And again, this is the Bradwell one, and this gives further detail about why that target hasn't necessarily been met as expected. So members are invited to review the performance report and challenge the delivery of the corporate plan outcomes and the initiatives provided. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for that very interesting presentation. Obviously, with the COVID, we realise some of the outcomes are red, but that's to be expected. But bearing that in mind, it seems quite a good report. So, questions, members. Berna, have we got anyone that wishes to raise a question?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Jarvis would like to ask a question.
Okay, Councillor Jarvis, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I had three questions, one of which may have already just been answered, but they were regarding the report. First is on page 70, Chairman, concerning open spaces. I read with interest point 2, which says, due to future council process and key vacancies within service, capacity for review and writing of plan is currently very limited. Just wondered if somebody could comment further on that. Do you want me to give the questions
go through
one at a time? Three questions. Do you want them one at a time, Chairman?
I would go through all three and then we can ask the opposite.
Thank you, Chair. The second question I've got is page 71 with regards to air quality. And I think there we have just heard some comment on that, but I noticed that I wondered if we could be given some more precise dates as to when something might be done on that. The target was for completion December 2019. I just wondered if more information could be given. And the third item is on page 80, which relates to the rural coastal business. But I do believe, I think I'll withdraw my question on that regarding what's happening, because I think we just had our attention drawn to a detailed explanation of that. So I've just the two questions, Chairman, page 70 and page 71, open spaces and air quality.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Cheryl Hughes, may you comment on those, please?
I think they're probably better for Richard to pick up, which is why he's...
Thank you, Chairman. Can I help with the question then, please?
Thank you, no problem.
Yes, essentially around the capacity of the team that looks after our open spaces, unfortunately, is competing priorities just at the moment. Obviously, our long-term aim is to have those management plans in place. They've very much been caught up in operational matters and certainly around COVID since probably February this year. But before that, obviously, we have been through a complete structural change within the council. It has meant there has been a delay, and it's just been compounded by COVID. So it's a case that they're certainly on the work plan to be done, but unfortunately, we've not been able to deliver them at this time.
Thank you. Are you commenting on the second question as well?
Yes, could I just ask that question to be put to me just once more so I fully understood the question, if that's possible, please?
Councillor Jarvis, could we?
Yes, Chairman, I think that one was page 71, just regarding air quality. I wasn't sure that I could see specific dates as to when anything was actually going to be done by.
Thank you. Yes, air quality. There was a meeting of the working group this week to actually review the report, and there will be a report coming to council. Again, there has been a delay in getting that forward, but it's been a very comprehensive consultation document. We have an assurance that we believe it's a robust process that we've been through. So you'll be seeing that coming to council very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
May I just ask, Mr. Holmes, before you go, do we know when that's coming to the council?
I believe it could be the 2nd or the 16th. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date here, but it's certainly certainly in July.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions from members, Berna?
Yes, Councillor Mrs. Channer has a question, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Channer, please.
Sorry, Chairman, my machine just went then. I've had to come back in using my password and join the meeting again. So I've missed part of that. I am sorry. And I've lost my papers. So I'm going to have to do it from memory. But what I've noticed is, so I can't define the pages now, unfortunately, a number of the red, which show we haven't met targets, on a number of them, and one's to do with health of older persons, which is a strategic priority. A number of them are claiming that they haven't got, there's not enough resource. Now, and that's just a blanket thing. It doesn't mention COVID or anything. It says about staff resource more than once in some of these red itemised things. What I'd like to know, please, is that lack of resource because we haven't got the staff? Because I thought we were up to sort of quantifiable amounts that allowed our resource to be okay. Or is it partly to do with COVID, although the report doesn't say that, but it keeps saying lack of resources. And I don't think it's just financial. It seems to refer to bodies, as in staff. I'd just like, and I would perhaps like to have an update on all that, maybe outside of the meeting, on all those reds, just how the resources are now, if that can't be answered at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Does any of the officers wish to comment on that, please? Okay. Mr. Holmes did.
Sorry. Yes,
yes,
Chairman. Sorry, I was rapidly trying to turn on there. Yes, I think where there are issues with resources, they are largely to do with either the COVID issue, or we are still operating slightly under the full establishment in terms of the number of staff, but there's not a significant issue in terms of us being able to deliver all of the requirements on us when all those posts are full. But I'm more than happy to discuss in further detail with Councillor Channer outside of the meeting.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Channer?
Well, I am. What I would suggest, Madam Chairman, like where we have lack of staff resource or whatever the wording is, and if it is COVID related, then I think that may have been helpful to put that at the point where it says lack of resources or due to resources. If there was COVID implications, then that might have been helpful because remember, members of the public are reading this also. So that's where I'm coming from. But yes, perhaps I will discuss outside of the meeting because there's several, and one of them was tourism as well. I think we've now got the staff in place, but I think that was partly staff resources again, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I would personally like to be party to that discussion, if I may, please.
Absolutely, I have no problem.
Of course.
That's all right with you. thank you. Anyone else, Berno, wishes to raise?
Yes, we've got Councillor Swain and then Councillor Hurd.
Okay, Councillor Swain, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I have actually five comments on this item in Appendix 1, mostly for clarification or information. My pages are as in the printed papers, so page 64 and so on. Page 64, I would like to have, perhaps not necessarily now, but separately from some officer, information about what is the Year 6 transition template for junior schools. If I can move to page 66, the place outcomes C and E both refer to partnership working and voluntary input. I wonder if we could have some general indication of the outside partners involved and the nature of the voluntary input into those activities. Page 68, the way I read it, the fly tipping performance seems to be rather poor. At least that's the way I read the graph. Page 69, this is something that I have aired with Matt Lee, and he has given me an explanation. It is this peculiarity that if the major house builders are going slow, this somehow turns into a lack of 5-year housing land supply. But it is stated elsewhere that we do have 5-year land supply. My last point concerns page 77 about job creation. I would like to know what the meaning is of the figure of 21,000 that is shown for 18 and 19. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Swain. I'm not sure if all your questions could be answered at this meeting, but they will have been noted. So I'm sure that you will get a response if we don't have the right officers present at this meeting. Are there any officers that wish to speak on any of those points?
Chairman, if I may help just with regard to the fly tipping.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, very much a variable picture. There are obviously a number of fly tips. Some of them are on public land, some of them are on private land. Perhaps private land isn't reflected in the figures, so it perhaps doesn't give a true figure of the scale and perhaps the potential. We certainly monitor it and track it on a regular basis. We are beginning to see an upturn in fly tipping. There are a number of reasons that could be occurring. Obviously, at the moment within the district, we've only got one of the household recycling centres open in Malden and not in the Dengie and the Burnham on Crouch. But we understand the County Council are working to reopen that now that social distancing rules have been relaxed. So we're hoping that we see that open and obviously that helping with fly tipping. So although I can't account for every kind of instance in terms of detail why, but I can say we are monitoring, our contractor monitors, and obviously we're working with us to try and resolve that problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holmes. Are there any other officers that could answer any of the other points that Councillor Swain has raised, please?
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy to answer the last 2 points that Councillor Swain raised. The first being around the strategic site development and the 5-year housing land supply. Councillor Swain is correct. We do have a 5-year housing land supply. We undertake monitoring work and establish that annually and provide returns on that and publish that figure. So we do have a 5-year housing land supply. We also passed the housing delivery test, which is a government check on the progress with delivery of housing according to the LDP. So we're well on track with both of those, despite the information as presented here. Obviously, the current COVID downturn and the slowdown of work on site may have a national impact on that, and there are national discussions going on around how that may affect the way that 5-year housing land supplies are reviewed in the coming year. But currently, yes, we have a 5-year housing land supply, and yes, we were one of the councils that passed the housing delivery test. Sorry, the next one was, it was the 21,000 jobs, wasn't it? That relates to the life of the local development plan, that figure. So the progress is related in terms of working towards that figure. It's not broken down into individual years. It's a figure for the life of the LDP. So any progress shows progress towards that overall target. Thank you.
Councillor Swain, I know there were a couple of other points. Sorry, is there another member officer that wishes to speak?
Yeah, so Cheryl Hughes.
Cheryl.
I was just going to say that the other questions that you've asked for more detail around, I can always take those back offline and come back with the information.
I think if you would do that, that would be helpful. And if you could copy your response to me as well, please. Yep. Thank you.
Well, Madam
Are you
Chairman,
happy with that, Councillor Swain?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Madam Chairman,
sorry,
may I just come in? If there's going to be an offline response, could it be circulated to all committee members?
Yes, we can do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Is that what members require? Yes, of course. Okay, so any other members that wish to speak, Berna?
Yes, Chairman, Councillor Hurd, and could we ask members not to use the raising of the hand function, because we don't have that facility for all at the moment, to remind everybody to use the chat feed. But it's Councillor Hurd next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to talk about staff turnover. Can we be assured that we're not losing our local expertise and reskilling new staff? Do we have any way to indicate to members where we stand to reassure continuity of service or performance, please?
Thank you. Have we got an officer that would comment on that, please?
Yes.
Yes, happy to comment on that, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Traditionally, Malden has had a very low turnover of staff. Obviously, through the transformation, that changed to some degree as we were looking at changing roles that were going forward. Over the last 6 months to 8 months since we went live, things have very much stabilised in terms of that, and we've now got much less turnover, and we're filling those posts up to full establishment. So we can look at those figures specifically to look at what the annual figure is for staff turnover, and possibly look at it over the last 8 months as well, to show how it's stabilised since the end of the transformation and go live there. And happy to provide a bit more detail on that if we do some analysis on it.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Dobson, will that be part of the performance that information will come through in performance reports, or is it something separate?
It's something separate. We, as officers, we obviously monitor in a lot of detail all of the operations. So I'll draw it out of that and share it with members and see if there's any further analysis needed.
And that will be to this committee?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to speak?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Chana has a question.
Oh, Councillor Chana.
Councillor Stilts.
Okay, Councillor Stilts then, really, because Councillor Chana's already raised something. Can I take Councillor Stilts first, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I ask Mr. Dobson that when he does the review of the staff turnover, can we see anonymously the reason, the exit questionnaire for any staff that has just recently left? I take it we do an exit questionnaire for all our leavers, so that might be quite good to see, mainly looking at why they are actually leaving us.
Thank you, Councillor Stilts. I will say your volume is very low.
Sorry, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Councillor, Mr. Dodson, you wanted to comment on that?
My understanding, we obviously do undertake exit interviews. My understanding is that they're confidential. I would have to check the status of any data within those before making any commitment to release those. I will ask the question.
Thank you. Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just tying in really with that question Councillor Hurd asking about when staff leave, and also what Mr. Dodson said and what he's now going to be doing. Can I just ask, and bearing in mind actually I can speak at first hand on this because I was involved somewhere where I was given this information. I think sometimes what happens is some of the staff we may have lost may have had a lot of the useful information contained within their heads and not necessarily written down, and that includes processes and protocols. Will Mr. Dodson be covering how that might be addressed to ensure that when we leave it, you're going to lose long-standing staff, good staff who have a lot of knowledge in the practices, etc., and any knowledge that might be in their heads, that we make sure we capture that before they go, and what process might be applied to ensure that happens, so that knowledge that's in the heads can be transferred across to other staff, whether it be a manual or anything. I did ask some years ago, and it was going to be happening, and I don't think it has, about a manual for planning. Bearing in mind, plan has changed pretty quickly. Couldn't there be a manual just whereby, you know, a protocol for each process so anyone coming in could see it? I was told that was going to happen by a head of planning service some years ago, actually. I'm not sure that ever came to fruition because, again, that person left and maybe that not have continued. So I'm just asking about containing that knowledge base that may be going out. And if you lose all your knowledge at one time, you're starting from scratch effectively.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Have we got any officers that wish to comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Holmes would like to.
Mr. Holmes, please go ahead, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, obviously regarding loss of information and skills out of the authority is a serious matter. I can give a reassurance that obviously when a member of staff does leave the council, there is a process where we actually go through with them to actually get that information and make sure that we understand the processes that they are responsible for and able to take forward. I think obviously through transformation, it's helped a great deal because a lot of our processes now are well documented. Of course, there are always things that staff actually do that's just perhaps not as well documented, but we're in certainly a much better position than we have been in the past in terms of fully documenting our processes and our systems. So just wanted to reassure that our managers and team leaders are very much aware of knowledge lost from the authority and take the necessary steps.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any more members that wish to speak, Benna?
Yes, we have Councillor Nunn.
Councillor Nunn, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, just picking up on the points that councillors have already made and the responses from officers regarding turnover. Any organisation is going to have a minimal turnover, and high levels of turnover and low levels of turnover can be good or bad things depending on the circumstances and the context. So when we get this report, and I do really think the report needs to come to all of us, not to individual members, I'd like to see where that's being benchmarked in terms of other authorities. I'd like to know numbers in terms of the staff leaving and being appointed. And I'd like to see that by grade or by tier. And I'd also like to see destinations in terms of those that are leaving. And I can assure Mr. Dodson, from my experience in HR, that that is not confidential information. It won't identify individual people. It just will give us numbers in terms of the staff and will give us categories of destination. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nunn. Well, as Mr. Dodson said, there will be a report coming back to this committee on this. So thank you. Fiona, have we got any other member?
No more speakers.
No more speakers? Okay, members, then we will go to the recommendations. There are 4 little recommendations. Just briefly cover those. Review the information. Assured that the review has been managed effectively. Challenge the performance and question on the decisions and performance. Well, I think we've done all those. So if members are happy, I would like a seconder to that recommendation. Those four little recommendations, please.
Just a second, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Berna, have we got anyone now from BDO present?
We need to take.
Yes, we do need to take a vote, members. Are we all happy to go rather than individually as a bulk to agree?
Yes,
agreed. Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed.
That's agreed then. So, Berna, have we got Miss Donnelly now or anyone else from BDO?
Yes, we've got Miss Donnelly. She's ready to present for item 6.
Thank you. Thank you. Then we will go back then to item 6 on the agenda, which was internal audit reports, progress follow-up recommendations and network security. So again, reminding members to go into the chat function rather than using the hand, because not everyone has got the hand on their machine. So we must use the chat function if you want to speak. And try and keep your points clear and succinct. Thank you. So, Ms. Donnelly, are you happy to go ahead and present the report, please?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. I'll start with page 21 of the meeting pack. This just outlines the progress since the last committee meeting. There has been one audit finalised, so that is the network security report, which I will run through in a moment, and also the community safety report, which has been issued in draft. In terms of other reports, I also present the follow-up of recommendations report. In terms of the 2021 audit plan, obviously there has been some delays due to staff capacity due to the coronavirus. So I've been working with officers to just kind of re-look at the plan, see if everything in there is still relevant and when we can begin field work. And we've now come up with a plan, so I'll bring that forward to the next committee meeting for approval. But in the meantime, we'll be starting the Q2 audits that have been scheduled. I'll just move along then to the follow-up of recommendations report. If there's no questions on the general progress.
Do you want to go through the whole thing and then we'll come back to questions?
Oh, okay. In terms of the follow-up report, there's been some good progress, and there's been a lot of recommendations implemented regarding IT disaster recovery and procurement and contract management. Around disaster recovery, we've seen that disaster recovery plan has been updated and tested, so that closes off a lot of the recommendations. In terms of those that are overdue, the first one of these is around the fraud risk assessment. I've been working with Director of Resources this week to come up with a plan to get this done as soon as possible. And I think we're now at the stage where we'll be able to progress the work over the summer. I just need to get some dates on when we can start to deliver some training to the key staff that need to know about some counter fraud issues, so procurement to HR and finance. So at the next committee, we'll be able to provide a detailed plan of timings when the various counter fraud work will begin. The other overdue recommendation is around risk management, and officers have asked for an extension to July to complete that, just due to staff capacity and getting the risk KPIs in place in time for this committee. So that one remains overdue with a request to extend to July.
And network security?
Network security, this was a moderate report. Since the time of completion, actually each of the recommendations has now been implemented, but I'll just run through what we did. So this was looking at how secure the council's controls were in terms of IT systems and security, any vulnerabilities that may have existed, and around infrastructure and the support and software. We identified a lot of good practice, but we had three recommendations. One was around the IT password policy and data security training. Compliance, this has now been done, and compliance will be monitored by HR. We also noted that there's need for cyber risk assessments to be undertaken on a regular basis. with all potential cyber risks and mitigations documented and any controls in place. This is now also being done. And also we recommended that the council obtained vulnerability scanning tool, which has also been completed. This will improve ongoing awareness of any system weaknesses that can be actioned as soon as they arise. So there was a couple of things that need to be done, which have actually all now been implemented. That's everything.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So members, Bernard, have we got any members that wish to you can actually, members, if you've got a question on any of those three, you can take them all together. You might have a question on each one or just one, but we'll take whatever questions.
So we have Councillor Swain first.
Okay, thank you, Bernard. Councillor Swain.
Yes, I have 3 quick questions on appendix. What is it? Appendix 1, I think, on page 21, and one on appendix 2, page 31. On page 21, can you clarify, please, what does an audit of community safety cover as far as NDC is concerned? The flood risk management state is that the groundwork has been done.
Yeah.
I can't recall from what you just said whether you've got any sort of deadline when you might have a report to come to council. And the third one, is there a timetable for the audit of the corporate plan and priorities? My fourth one on page 31 is, and it really applies elsewhere, I think, and that is the threshold of £25,000 for what should we say, more intensive and cooperative discussion of procurement bids. As auditors, are you happy that 25,000 is not too high a figure, or do you think it should be lower before to trigger wider discussion of any procurement business? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. Ms Donnelly, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yes. I'll start with community safety. So this was, in terms of reference were agreed with officers, this was looking at how the council works with the kind of all the different stakeholders, so police and other groups. I would need to go back and look at the terms of reference exactly to see what all was included in the audit. Which I can send through the terms of reference if that would be useful offline. I just don't have the detail right now.
Okay, fine.
In terms of the flooding risk management, the field work has been completed, but we are waiting some final information from officers to try and get the report issued in draft. I think there was some delays due to the key member of staff not having capacity to provide some information, obviously due to coronavirus. But the fieldwork has been completed overall, and we expect to be issuing a draft report in the next 2 weeks, I would imagine. And in terms of what was the question around corporate plan and priority?
And do you have a timetable for work on that?
So that one we had initially agreed a mid-July start date, but because of just the delays with getting some of the work started, we have had to come up with a revised internal audit plan, which I'm hoping to bring to the next committee. And that's something I've been working with officers this week on. And there may be a decision to defer that audit depending on audit days and resources, because we're obviously adding some work around the counter fraud plan into the days for this year.
And there was another question, wasn't there, Councillor?
The last point was about whether you considered the £25,000 threshold too high for triggering, if we say, wider discussion of any procurement business.
Sorry, 1 second. I mean, I guess it's in line with the procurement regulations that the council works towards. Obviously, there are a number of controls in place, that the procurement team would be involved in some of the contracts and tenders lower than that value.
You find, Madam Chairman, that's possibly a question that I should raise in a different forum, is it?
What regarding? Yes, I think that it's part of our procurement process. So yes, it's not some. I mean, we can think about it elsewhere, but not here.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Donnelly, on the first question, then you've got to come back on that. So, could you come back to all the committee members? Well, to me, and then I'll circulate it to all committee members.
Yeah, no
thank you. Are you happy, Mr. Councillor Swain?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Berna, have we got anyone, other member who wishes to speak on this?
Yes, we've got Councillor Jarvis, then Councillor Durham, and finally Councillor Mrs. Channer. Okay,
Councillor Jarvis.
Thanks very much, Chairman. I mean, my question was on it's on page 35 of the report. Emma Donnelly has commented on it already. This is the fraud risk assessment. I note that Director of Resources is going to commission external resource, and Emma Donnelly has commented, obviously, that she's currently having discussions about getting on with this. I'm conscious that it is outstanding from quite a while back. It should be quite a high priority, and I just wondered if we might ask the Director of Resources to confirm that basically we're going to get on with that job. I don't want to be here at the end of the year still discussing that we're going to get on with it soon. I'd like to know that it's going to be done over the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the Director of Resources?
Yes.
Possibly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just waiting for your prompt. Yes, happy to confirm. I appreciate I've only been here less than 2 months, but you've been waiting for this for far longer. So it is a top priority. As I said, we've already formed an action plan within this time period, and we're looking to implement that ASAP, preferably. So yeah, very much getting on with it, and we've got a plan, and we're going to implement it. So yeah, happy to report that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leslie. So we've got Councillor Durham. Councillor Durham, you have a question?
I do, Chairman. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Chairman, have you got me? Yes, you
have. Got you now.
Thank you very much. The question I would like to ask is actually about what things that are happening now. The government's COVID financial support measures, obviously that the district council has been administering. We've had it reported at Essex that there has clearly been a lot of fraud, and obviously when we have things like these financial packages, the fraud potential is considerable, but it has been reported that there has been, regrettably, quite a lot of fraud, and I would like to know what measures the authority is taking to prevent this from occurring, please.
Thank you. Director of Resources, would you want to comment on that one?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so the council has fraud procedures in place as well, and also has instructions for individual departments as well. As part of the arrangements, we're also strengthening those. We've had training as well for staff, and I believe as the fraud audit recently took place, it wasn't just this one recommendation that's still outstanding. There were a number which have been implemented. So there are a number of good practices that have now been implemented and put in place. One of the areas as well is particularly around procurement. As you can imagine, certainly you get a lot of people trying to change bank details and suppliers and that way. So it's very much something that we're alive to. We've got processes and procedures around that as well to come in place. So it's looking at those high risk areas. So we've got a lot of good work that's been done already as part of the audit, and we're going to continue with that action plan going forward as well. So it's very much on the radar.
Thank you very much for that.
Chairman, if I could just come back.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I was specifically asking about the COVID grants, etc., that have actually been turned around extremely quickly by the authority. and I've certainly had a lot of communication congratulating the authority on this. But I'm just wondering whether the alacrity of giving out these grants has been to the detriment of preventing fraudulent requests, please.
Apologies, Councillor Darren. Regards that as well, that's something that we've put in place. The team, as you know, there's been a very push to get the grants out quickly, and what we feel that the council has done is balance that with the need for appropriate checks and reasonable checks as well. So we feel that we've done that in a very sensible manner, and checks are being carried out, and we've requested information. So there are these processes in place for these grants as well. So we're satisfied that we've done the reasonable checks that are required. There'll also be some follow-up work that's currently being undertaken, led by central government and other bodies in response to the fraud. So we're taking part in those national fraud initiatives as well. So there is some follow-up work to be done. So the first tranche, we've done our reasonableness checks, we've paid the grants, but we're also going to be doing further work as well as part of the national drive to capture fraud and investigate fraud and follow up on any of those things. So we feel we've done what's required around that, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you very much indeed. That's well answered, and again, congratulations for turning them around so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Channer, I believe you had a question.
Thank you. Oh gosh, it's gone now. Right, I'll do it from memory again. Madam Chairman, thank you. I'm homing in actually on Councillor Jarvis's question. It seems all centering on that. That's because it is a high priority level, and it is about the fraud risk assessment. And heard the Director of Resources state now that we have got an action plan, and it's impossible. And we need to make sure we implement that as soon as possible. And the report itself on current progress says we've about the outline action plan agreed by the end of June, with delivery as soon as practical. I'm just really seeking some clarification on that, Madam Chairman. You know, we're hearing as soon as possible and as soon as practical. An action plan, to my knowledge, would have several elements to it, and each of those elements of action should have a timeline. And therefore, when we say delivery as soon as practical, I'd really like to have an indication of sort of some flow of this or timeline when we think this would come in, because it could go, if these actions aren't signed off quick enough or implemented quick enough, could go on, as Councillor Jarvis indicated, for some considerable period of time. Could we be given an indication of when all these actions are meant to be concluded? Are some of them long term with checks going on in between? I'm not quite clear. It's this delivery as soon as practical. What will influence that practical delivery? You know, so we could have a short term where it's implemented, or we could find ourselves going into a region of where we're going into another financial year after this even.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you. Yes, I've very much pushing an open door. I agree it's a priority and I want to get on with it as soon as possible. So we're aligned in terms of our thinking there. What we've got in terms of the time the report comes to you and the time it's written is obviously a bit of a delay. So what that wording does is not to commit to something we haven't agreed at the time of writing, but at the same time, you're asking a very sensible question: when are we getting on with it? So as Donnelly has indicated, we've had those discussions have taken place, and we are looking at a follow-up meeting with one of their fraud leads to get on with this, with a start date in next month as well. And once we have those initial discussions, we'll be able to firm out some dates for the whole action plan going forward. So what I don't want to do is present you with some dates that we haven't agreed and that will be false information for you. So what we're doing now is looking at how we tackle it and the state doing that, and we're going to start the work. Have to report back how we're going with that and actually what dates we're looking to achieve. So it's very much a question of getting it on as soon as possible. We're getting it on with it in July, and we're going to report back to you with the plan. So we are trying to get on with this as soon as we can.
Thank you for that, Mr. Leslie. Well, we do have a meeting at the end of July, so perhaps we could have an update then with dates and progress. That would be good. Thank you. Berna, sorry, Mr. Leslie, did you want to come back? No. Berna, have we got any other members that wish to speak?
Yes, Chairman, we've got Councillor Stamp.
Okay, Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Leslie wasn't around when we was at a previous meeting when it was identified an area of weakness or an area of development when the previous audits were carried out. And one of the areas I was really concerned with was councillors' expenses. Now, it was identified that there wasn't a sufficient checks and balances. Could Mr. Leslie assure me or reassure me that that area has been looked into now, that petrol receipts are being given and destinations and mileages are being checked? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. Mr. Leslie? Sorry, we're putting you on the spot a bit here.
No, it's quite all right. Thank you. Now, I quite understand there was a lot of activity around this area in the past. I believe now that there is guidance up on the site where you do fill in your returns. I've seen it, and I've seen the form you use to complete the returns as well. In terms of the fuel receipts, they're not required. In terms of the issue, I believe this was as a point raised in a report previously, was about recording the start and end destination. And from recollection, that has been tackled in the form as well, where you enter the postcodes, I believe, for the start and finish time. So I believe those points have been picked up and addressed now.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie, but I know that I have not received anything to advise me of this new form.
No,
I'm not sure any other members have. So if there is a new form, we need to know. Obviously, at the moment, we're not using petrol to get to the office, but, you know, we haven't seen this new form or been advised of any new processes as far as I know.
OK. I will pick up with the team and just see what's gone in the past with regard to communication. And clearly, if I'm being told that you're not up to speed with it, then communications need to go out, so we'll get that looked at.
Yeah,
thank you, Chairman, for allowing that, because I actually don't claim, so I don't deal with anything like that, but it did concern me that that was highlighted as a public meeting, and we need to be shown to be doing what we're looking after public money in all areas. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Stamp, for raising that. Any other members, Berna?
Yes, Councillor Nunn.
Councillor Nunn?
Sorry, Chairman, my microphone was off. Yes, so a follow-up for Mr. Leslie. I continue to be confused why this council believes that they should not ask for petrol receipts. Surely, if it's an issue of VAT, that's one aspect. If it's an issue of taxable benefit with individual members and officers having this taken into account with their tax coding, surely there needs to be an audit trail whereby the revenue can be assured that the payments that are made equate to excess mileage and that the expenditure has been undertaken.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nunn. But I think, as Mr. Leslie said, you know, we as members haven't really been told that we don't need petrol receipts. We always used to have to submit petrol receipts. So I don't know who's made the decision to not have petrol receipts now. So I think we need to wait for some advice from somewhere.
I do appreciate that, Chairman, but Mr. Leslie has made a specific statement, which is petrol receipts are not required.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm intrigued to know why.
OK, thank you, Councillor Nunn. Mr. Leslie, do you want to come back on that? Do you know the answer?
Yes, happy to come back. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yep, so this relates to efficiencies. It doesn't relate to taxable benefits or anything like that. It's purely a look at efficiencies, and the work was undertaken. It was deemed that the administration cost of doing this far outweighed the financial benefit of doing that. So it's purely a look at that and saying, actually, this is a very labour, time-intensive process for very little financial benefit, and therefore the costs outweighed the benefit of having this procedure in place.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. I don't think members that we know about that, but yes. OK, well, we'll move on. Is there any other member who wishes to speak, Berna?
Councillor Mrs. Chandler would just like to come back on the issue of the form, the expense.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Well, I did know about no VAT receipts, and in fact, I got told about that when we had the first issue of the members' expenses when there was the hiccup. And I attended a meeting where I was told I did question about that. And what Mr. Leslie has just said is the message I got. I have seen the new form, Madam Chairman. During COVID, I went to do my March mileage and I received it. And because I also queried the policy, I got the policy sent as well. I made some representation on the policy because it was slightly different to what I've been told in a meeting. And I was told that would be amended. Anyway, I did utilise the form and put in the postcodes in. However, I was only able to go so far before things happened. It didn't seem to work. So I did manage to submit it, and I spoke to David Wall, who's a very good officer. He sent me another form to say use in future, but he said I was quite right. There was a hiccup with the form. So I'm hoping that that now has been sorted, and the form we use, that all members will be using the one that does work, because there was a certain point when you filled in, you found yourself, well, I won't explain it all now, but all I can say is I'm aware of the form as well. And there is a policy as well of members. And I think that was signed off. When I was querying something, it was the days of Tina Stankley. She said about a policy having to be signed off somewhere, I think. So I believe that has happened, and I've seen a copy of it.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Well, I think, Mr. Leslie, we just need some clarification on that, and it probably needs to go to all members. I wasn't aware of a new policy, but then this could have come through the COVID-19 interim measures group, I guess. So we await your advice on that one, Mr. Leslie. Any other members, Berna?
Councillor Stills. Sorry, Councillor Hurd and Councillor Stills.
Okay, Councillor Stills.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Question for Mr. Leslie. When we had the last audit report, I did actually query. There was a thing on there that said that out of 10 company credit cards that were looked at, there was anomalies where they hadn't actually been signed off to say that they were actually used for company business. Can Mr. Leslie assure me that that has now been rectified?
Thank you. Mr. Leslie, could you just confirm that?
I'll look into that and get back, but if it was raised at the time, then I'm confident it would have been, but let me look into that and get back to the group just to see exactly what the issue was, the wording and what's been put in place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you on that. Councillor Hurd.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have to say, I'm really very, very surprised that we're not doing any of these checks about mileage receipts. Certainly in my time as a councillor, I've never claimed any mileage, and I never intend to. But I do think that there should be some checks, and there is an opportunity for this council to claim back the VAT, surely. And I really can't see why it isn't viable, and I'm very, very surprised that we're not looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Well, I think Mr. Leslie's report on this to us will clarify those points. There is a policy now apparently agreed, so we need to look at that and decide if we want to look at this any further. Any other members, Berna?
No, Chairman.
Right, well, I personally, as we've got someone from IT, would like to ask for an update on the report on network security, where there is a section for high, which did concern me. It does mention going back to January discussions, and I just wanted to ask for some guidance on whether the recommendations have been put in place on that one. Have we still got Mr. Hulley here?
Yes, Chairman, and he can answer that question.
Thank you.
Just unmuting. Hello, Chairman. Yes, so there was one high item when it came to the security side of our network. I'm just putting it up in front of me now to make sure I've got it to hand. Scroll down here, one high item. Yes, so the high item was specifically around IT training in this case, so a budget being provisioned to allow for training of our staff on password security and data security. Thankfully, we actually had a system in place which is known as e-learning. We have now utilised that with the ICT policies, there's 3 in total, to essentially train our staff on both password length, password security, and best practices, as well as confirming that when they access or use data, that access is controlled. So that's now been implemented. Staff are actively being trained using this e-learning platform, and that's now being monitored by HR as well.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Bernard, so we have no more members on the item.
No.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going now, members, to the recommendations, which are 3 little recommendations to approve the Appendix 1, 2 and 3 on the internal audit reports. So do I have a seconder to those recommendations, please? Would you put your video and microphone on if you want to second?
Yes, Councillor Durham is indicating he's seconding.
Okay. Are all members happy with that, with those recommendations?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. Okay, then we go on to agenda item 8, which is the quarterly review of corporate risk. So again, reminding you to use the chat function. I think most of you are doing that now, so that's great. So I go to Cheryl Hughes to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to share my screen again to show you the report. And hopefully that should now be live. Okay, so this is the Q4 report of risk, and it's provided for member review. It's worth noting that the corporate leadership team have been reviewing and keeping a close eye on the risk register on a weekly basis since the start of the COVID emergency measures. The report provided shows direction of travel between Q3, when this was last reported to PGA, and then Q4. So overall, there are 3 risks that have seen a decrease in score. So first I'll take you to risk number 29, which is failure to deliver services as a result of COVID-19. And then we've got risk 22, which is on page 6. So that's contracts not managed or owned and not providing value for money. And risk 20. So that's the failure to have a disaster recovery and business continuity plan. There were also new additions to the risk register for this period. So we've got risk 29, which was new. It's also seen a decrease in that time where it's been reviewed so frequently. But that's the failure to deliver services as a result of COVID-19. And risk 28, which was the finance audit, debtors, creditors and expenses around a poor audit outcome. So this was raised for inclusion as it temporarily met the corporate threshold, but it has since been mitigated and recommended for closure because the finance audit actions are now in place. So this information is provided to give members an approach to review risk management and challenge where there's concern on corporate delivery. And I think that covers everything. So, oh, sorry, 3 risks where we've seen an increase in score as well. So just to take you to those. So we've got risk 9, which is about a coordinated approach to inward investment and business rate growth. Risk 15, which is failure to plan and deliver balanced budgets, and risk 2, which is about failure to target services and influence partners around the vulnerable population. All 3 of those have seen an increase in risk score due to the impact of COVID-19. So that's a summary of what's gone on in the reporting quarter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for that. Just to remind members that this risk register is owned by the CLT, so we comment on what we consider are these risk scores, not the content of the risk itself. So, Bernard, have we got members that wish to speak on this?
Yes, we've got Councillor Swain, Councillor Hurd, and Councillor Jarvis. So, Councillor Swain.
So, Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of one question. Firstly, on that R9, I would like to know who has responsibility for that. That is the coordinated economic strategy, as far as I remember the wording. As a general point, I question the weighting overall that is given. If you look at the two sets of numbers, the likelihood and the impact, impact varies little between levels 3 and 4 and occasionally 5, whereas likelihood varies from 1 to 5. So in fact, the final score is very much biased by the estimation of likelihood rather than impact. This is a sort of feature of the psychology, I suppose, of how people assess the weightings. But to my mind, the overall result is that the overall risk factor doesn't really take sufficient account of how important the particular risks are. It can't be simply reduced to one number multiplied by another.
Okay, thank you. Well, this has been revised from what we had originally, and since Ms. Cheryl Hughes has been with us, this has been changed, this way of doing it. So, Cheryl, would you like to explain a bit more about how it's worked?
So the risk rating score on a 5x5 scale is actually the scale is actually shown at the start of the appendix as well. So to show what the criteria are for scores 1 to 5 for likelihood and impact. And the reason that we've moved to a 5x5 scale is that standard industry practice, and it actually came out of an internal risk audit that BDO did. That actually we were previously working on a 4x4 scale, and that wasn't best practice, which is why we've moved to the 5x5 scale, and the scores have been revised.
Thank you. Councillor Swain, I think you raised a particular point somewhere on this.
Yes, who has, should we say, the ownership, if that's the current expression, of R9?
What page is that on?
It's the first, it's the top of the list.
Oh, failure to have a coordinated approach to supporting inward investment and maximising rate growth. And your query is?
Who is responsible for that, or who has ownership of that?
Chairman, Mr. Dodson is coming in.
Sorry, Banner?
Sorry, saying that Mr. Dodson is happy to address that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dodson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, ownership for that sits within my directorate. And, you know, in answering that, I would like to address the 5 and the 5 score on that at the same time. You know, it hasn't been that high. It is purely a reflection of COVID. You know, the impact of anything we do currently at a micro level, as we work in economic terms, is outweighed by the macro effects of the COVID emergency. So the impact on the world economy and the national economy outweighs what we can do to coordinate to deliver that. So that's why we've put it up to 5 and 5, because basically it's not within our gift or our control at the moment, the issues that we're dealing with.
All right, thank you. Does that explain, Councillor Swain?
In a sense, yes, but it brings out my point that it's given this very high rating, and yet it is an area which is not really much under the influence of district council.
If I could come back again,
yes,
Chair,
Mr. Johnson, please.
That's absolutely correct. That it's not within our control, but it is a risk to us. It's a risk to us in terms of our targets around job creation. It's a risk to us around our business rate income. So it has a huge impact on us, and it's absolutely right that we put it on there as a risk, even though it's not necessarily one that we can, at the current time, control because of those external factors which outweigh any internal factors.
Okay, thank you. Are you happy with that?
But at any time, we have very little influence over it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Councillor Swain, for that. Councillor Hurd?
Thank you, Chairman. My question actually was why are the numbers not in order? But I see that they've been sorted in the overall risk rating. So obviously the overall risk is the highest, and then that gradually decreases. If it's an industry standard, fair enough, it can't be changed. But I just think that it would be better with a red, amber, green. If it's rising, it's red. If it's unchanged, it's amber, and if it lowers, it's green. It's just very easy to see which way that is. As far as things like risk 9, failure to have the coordinated approach, as Councillor Swain has said, it's not something that we would necessarily have control over, but then that can be shown to be mitigated in the commentary. And I think that should, although it says focus now on applying government-based business support, I just think it's an easier way of indicating whether they've gone up, staying where they are, or gone down. But if it's the industry standard, but if there are room for improvements, that's just a constructive criticism. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Hurd. I take your point about the traffic light thing, because we did have that before, and it was in a way easier to see. But this way we've got the overall risk highest first, and then as it goes lower. So I think it's fair enough as it is.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Jarvis. Hello.
Yes, no, thank you, Chairman. Just a bit slow on the fingers there.
That's all right.
Chairman, my question is just on governance. Could I ask where in the risk register it identifies ineffective governance as a risk? And my sort of secondary question would be that in view of the activity at the moment with regards to governance working parties and internal audits on corporate governance, when can the Performance, Governance and Audit Committee expect a substantive report on governance, and could we have that at the next meeting, please?
Mr. Dodson, do you want to comment on that one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to discuss that with Councillor Jarvis. I'm not clear exactly what he's asking for within that report. Obviously, there's a corporate governance working group are currently doing some work in light of the remote committees and the move to those, and how that works post October, and how that will be agreed at the statutory annual council in September. But I wasn't entirely sure which piece of work he wanted a report on to come to the committee next time, as that will go to council, that report.
Councillor Jarvis?
Yes, I'm just, I think my first question was where does ineffective governance appear in the risk register? If it's in there, I can't see it. If it's not there, should it be? Perhaps that's a question for Cheryl. And the second part was regarding the report. I think, you know, if we are the performance and governance audit, it just seems to me that we don't want to be derelict in our duties. I think a report telling me that governance is all okay would be fine. But if it's not, I'd quite like to see a substantial report telling me, perhaps commenting on areas that are under review or recommendations. I'm just puzzled that obviously we are PGA, and yet we don't seem to get any reports on governance. That was really my point.
Mr. Dodson, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, governance is something that isn't fluid all of the time. So it's not something that there are reports that would come through monthly in that way. If as a one-off report, the Councillor Jarvis would like us to review the governance, I mean, that would normally be an audit function. Could I take it away and give it some thought as to what we might present, and I'll discuss with Councillor Jarvis and you, Chairman, to look at what we might do around that piece of work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I don't think I got an answer to the first part. Is it in the risk register in effective governance?
Mr. Dodson?
I can't tell you every single risk that we have in there. We do have risks that cover from a operational level through to the corporate risk register, which is seen, which is those which are the higher risks. It's not one that has been flagged up as a major risk because the obviously the risk levels would be low. But I'll check on where we are with that and report back to the councillor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dobson, could I just ask, who is the Chief Risk Officer of the council?
Risk sits within my directorate. I am the risk manager.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis and Mr. Dodson. Anyone else, Berna? Any other member wishes to speak?
Yes, Councillor Hurd would like to ask a supplementary question.
Okay, Councillor Hurd.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think that only a week or so ago, I know other members were actually interviewed by Internal Audit on governance. When will we see that result, please?
Thank you. I think that's probably a question for Miss Donnelly. I don't know whether she's still with us.
Oh, sorry. Hi, yes, the fieldwork for that is now being completed, and I would just need to confirm the dates for the next, when the papers are due next, but it'll either be coming to the next committee meeting or the one after, but I should be able to let you know next week.
So the next one is the 30th of July. Are we likely to have it for that or not?
Probably not by the time it goes through the assurance process. If the papers are due 2 weeks before that, so it'll be the one after that then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members, Berna?
No, Chairman.
I'm aware, members, that no one's really challenged any of the risk scores, but we're happy with those.
Sorry, Chairman. Councillor Swain has put a comment in governance and overview and scrutiny. I wasn't aware it was a question. Governance and overview and scrutiny. Councillor Swain would apparently like to ask a question on that.
Okay, Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Clearly with performance, we have all this information because you can have a whole host of indicators of performance. It's difficult to envisage indicators of governance, but governance, reporting on the governance of the council is a responsibility of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and they should report on the governance of the council as part of their annual report.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. I think we are looking at this in corporate governance at the moment anyway, so that a report will come back, no doubt, based on that and the audit report on corporate governance. So members, we move to the recommendations unless anyone else wants to challenge any risk scoring, which we haven't done. We've gone through the other recommendations. We've looked at how it's managed effectively, commented, but we haven't really challenged any risk scoring. But I mean, if all members are happy, then I will move those 4 little recommendations. If someone would second, would they put their video and unmute, please?
Yes, Councillor Durham has indicated she's seconding the.
Councillor Durham. Okay, thank you. Recommendation. So, members, is everyone happy to agree all those 4 little recommendations?
Yes.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay, great.
Yes, agreed. Thank you.
Thank you all. So we move on to agenda item 9, which is corporate health and safety. I don't think I need to tell you about the chat function. I think we've got that now. So it's Mr. Richard Holmes who will present this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this is the corporate health and safety update from January the 1st to the 31st of March. During that period, there were 5 accidents reported. You'll see those at 3.1 of the report. 1 member of staff involved at an outside activity, some within the council offices themselves, and 1 member of the public who slipped and fell within the council chamber itself. During the same period, there were 4 instances of unacceptable behaviour reported the quarter, 2 incidents and 2 referrals from other agencies, and 1 was from the police and 1 from the Department of Work and Pensions. You'll find at the Appendix 1, the Health and Safety Action Plan for 1920. There has been some delay in that plan, obviously, for issues around COVID-19, and some of the activities within that plan itself were more based around the office occupation, which of course we're not at the moment. I'd like to just draw your attention to 3.4 of the report. There was a visit from the Health and Safety Executive regarding the operations within our Promenade Depot. This was regarding how we segregated staff from traffic movements. There are vehicle garages and storages of tractors and vehicles that manoeuvre, and there are a number of recommendations that the Health and Safety Executive made to the Council, and we've now implemented all those, and we understand that the case is now closed. It was technically at fault, so they've charged a fee for the intervention, which covers their costs. That's probably all I need to say on the report, Chairman, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Members?
Yes, Councillor Channer and Councillor Nunn would like to ask a question.
Okay, Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, on the report, well, actually, Mr. Holmes has touched on it. The report, the Appendix 1, did refer to vibrate. I'm going to look at the right hand. It's got vibration, and then it moves on, and it says about Appendix 1. It's the first one, and it does say, and it refers to what Mr. Holmes just said about something being material breach in the law was found in relation to workplace transport, and I think you've mentioned that's to do with staff and movements. But it does say, see Appendix 2 for details. So when I go to Appendix 2 for details, the only thing I can see is priority be given to the parks team due to the high level of risk and outdated procedures, if necessary, contracting external assistance to complete the task. I'm not quite clear what action has been put in place to overcome that breach, which the wording in this report says, breach of the law. To overcome, and so we do comply with the law. I'd perhaps be grateful for a bit of detail around that, because it sounds quite serious.
Yes, I absolutely can do that. Yes, it is serious, because obviously it is a concern for the health and safety of our staff, but fairly straightforward to resolve. So it's because of the layout of the depot itself. We've got an office and greenhouse that runs alongside a roadway, and also we have tractor store buildings, and often the vehicles are manoeuvring. And there was no segregation between the footpath and the lane where the vehicles could be turning. So Health and Safety Executive gave us some guidance in terms of how they would thought the layout of the yard should be changed, and it was quite straightforward. And we're putting a number of white and yellow lines effectively, and some barriers that allow the staff to walk along the pathway whilst vehicles are manoeuvring, and that is to protect them. So it wasn't significant. It certainly wouldn't underplay the risk, because obviously vehicles and reversing and staff obviously need to be kept separated. But it's fairly straightforward. I say we undertook that work quickly, following the guidance, and the inspector came back and has signed off as all completed.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Are you happy with that answer, Councillor Channer?
I am. Regarding Appendix 2, though, it does seem to imply there's other outdated procedures in the parks, and that's why they're high priority. And it seems to be that that won't be the only issue that we need to look at regarding health and safety.
Yes, Chairman, I can answer that as well. I think I triggered a review of our health and safety simply because of the changes that the council had undertaken during transformation. Number of different staff, operations had moved. So I requested that we did a review of our health and safety procedures, and that includes all of our safe working practices, all of our manuals. And yes, we brought in some external consultancy to give us an overall view of that and give us some recommendations for change. And the staff have been working through that. So part of our process is to put in a constant review. And we've also looked at training for the staff to make sure that we're all certificated, they work at height, they operate machinery. So all of those things to make sure that we've got robust procedures in place, risk assessments up to date, safe working practices are up to date. It's an ongoing piece of work. It's something we should never really stop, cyclical work. But obviously there is a priority around making sure any recommendations that come out of that review, we would action as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Bernard, did you say there was someone else? I can't remember.
Yes, Councillor Nunn and Councillor Skeens. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Nunn.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for your report. You mentioned 4 instances of unacceptable behaviour. Now, I appreciate that some of these people might not be our staff, they might be subcontracted, but I was saddened to read in the media about the collectors of recycling and refuse being abused by certain residents. And I wondered if you could comment on that in terms of volume and issues.
Certainly. First, I'd like to make it clear that the unacceptable behaviour was unfortunately, from the public to our staff or to our partners.
Yes, indeed.
So they are members of the public who visit the offices, and their behaviour is simply not acceptable to us. Yes. With regard to the refuse crews, unfortunately, there have been a number of occurrences where there has been verbal abuse. In one case, a physical shove to one of the refuse operators, and clearly, again, that is not acceptable. One of them, I think, was reported to the police. And in a couple of occasions, we've actually suspended the collection of the waste from that particular household because of the behaviour of the residents. It's very sad. Obviously, the refuse queues are working as hard as they can. They've worked constantly through COVID, whilst a lot of us have been locked down. They've been out there doing the work as best they can. Unfortunately, some people's tolerance is not as high, but obviously the important point is that we won't accept any of our staff or our contractors having verbal or physical abuse, and we will take action. So that was the background to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Councillor Skeens, was it?
Yes, Councillor Skeens and then Councillor Stamp, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Skeens.
Hi, yes, a couple of questions, if I may. The accidents, they're probably nothing to worry about, I hope. But the first question is there any likelihood that anybody might take legal action in connection to them, which obviously would be a further risk? And secondly, could we know what the fee was that the HSE charged for their intervention?
I will come back with an exact figure, and I can circulate that. I think it was in the low hundreds, but I just need to check that. And it is on a time-based method, so it's not a fine. It's effectively a charge for fee. So I will update members on the actual figure itself. But unlike a prosecution with a fine, this is a fee. But I will give a figure. And with regard to the accidents, they were all minor in nature. Obviously, if there is a claim against the council, then that is dealt with through our insurers. I'm not aware of any claim that's been put in as a result of that quarter and the accidents.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Stamp.
Yes, can I ask, please, Mr. Holmes, if you know when you've just carried out all your risk assessments, most probably under health and safety and COVID-19, obviously we've done the same in Burnham as most probably other parish councils have done. Are we allowed to have a copy for anything, say for the toilets or the park that you've carried out? Can we have them at our level, please? Because we've just done a big one, and on ours, I've just put that you are responsible for it, but I know that you'll have done a risk assessment. So can I have that information, or can we have that to back up any questions we get at our level, please? I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. I think the works we've done absolutely under COVID, we can share because there's a government toolkit where you do an assessment of the high street, the size around the high street, number of pedestrians, and that is effectively a risk assessment. I'm happy to get that shared. And as for risk assessments and working practices, perhaps I can speak to you separately, but yes, I have no problem with sharing. I think obviously town councils produce them as well, and I think the more we share and get best practice, the better.
Well, we've done ours, but I'm more concerned about the toilets. We keep getting constant complaints about the toilets and asking if they are being cleaned, whereas when you've produced it, you will have highlighted the risk in the areas, and we can turn around and say, well, this is what Malden Council's doing, and they're doing the best, etc., they can. I just think it would be helpful if we all did it together, rather than everybody else is reinventing the same wheel. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, and the toilet's a good point, and that's why we've got some toilets open and some closed at the moment, because we have brought in additional cleaning regimes to improve the cleanliness during the COVID crisis. Obviously, that was based upon a risk assessment. So yes, happy to get that shared for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Berna, are there any other members?
No, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holmes, I just want to ask about the action plan, because I assume now it has to be quite fluid because of COVID, and we are told we will be in this risk of infection for some time, maybe up to a year or longer. So I'm assuming, although you've got a timescale on a lot of these things, they're going to be fluid because we don't know what is happening in the future.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we do need to do a review now, particularly as we're coming out, perhaps what is the first phase of COVID, and go into something which we may have to live with for some months and maybe years to come. So I think we will do a review of that. And you're absolutely right. It needs to be fluid to reflect different risks. And obviously, our workforce at the moment are operating not in the same way as they were before. Most of us are working from home, apart from some of the activities perhaps around the parks where they're still working, and some other travelling officers. So yes, fluid, yeah, but we will take a COVID review of it, I think, and update it on that basis.
So at the moment, then we have an action plan. So that action plan, we're being asked to be approved by this committee. So the action plan is going to be fluid then, really.
If members would like to perhaps defer that health and safety action plan, and we could then do the update and revisit that and bring it back updated with our latest position. Now we've had a chance to get through perhaps the immediate crisis, that might be perhaps suitable for members. We could perhaps do that in the next meeting.
Yes, I think that would be better.
Okay.
So we will amend that recommendation, members, the recommendation little 4, to say the health and safety action plan for 2020 to 21 will be updated and brought back to this committee for approval. Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Yes, agreed.
Berna, as
yes, Chairman.
Are you happy with the wording on that?
Yes, and brought back to this committee for approval. Yes, thank you very much.
Are members happy with that?
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm changing that one. So
Wendy wants to speak, I think.
Sorry, Wendy,
Agreed.
come in.
Chairman, would you allow me just to ask Mr. Holmes to thank all his staff, especially the park litter pickers. I think we were all a little bit really saddened, and I'm sorry, I think it comes under health and safety, because they're actually working their socks off, picking up after groups of people who are using all our facilities and leaving copious amounts of rubbish, gas canisters, etc. And Chairman, I think it would be really nice if this committee thanked Mr. Holmes and his team, because they're the workers, they're the ones on the ground, not sitting at home in offices like what we are. And I think it would be really nice if he could thank everybody. Not degrading any officer sitting at home, so please don't fill my inbox with anything. But I think it's really important that they're recognised, Mr. Holmes, because we have seen the state of the parks, and we are getting reports of urination and horrible defecations in areas which they're actually having to clean. And it's really important this council recognises them, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yes, I think we all agree with that, Councillor Stamp, and also the refuse collectors who've been outstanding during this crisis. So if we can minute that, Berna, please.
Thank you for those kind words.
Thank you, Chairman.
So we will go back to the recommendations, members. So we've got the accident statistics, the Health and Safety Action Plan 1920, and information on health and safety matters, and then we're changing the last part of the recommendation for it to be updated and brought back for approval. So if I may have a seconder to that, please.
Councillor Hurd, happy to second that.
Councillor Hurd, good, thank you. And members, are you happy? The remainder of the members all happy with accepting that?
Yes.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay, lovely, thank you. So we go on to agenda item 10, which is the section 106 update report. And Mr. Dodson is going to present this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this report provides an update to members on progress with Section 106 delivery as requested at the last meeting of Performance Governance and Audit Committee. That meeting was back in April and a briefing report was placed on the ModGov library in March. Sorry, that meeting was in February and the report was due in April. Given the COVID issue, a report was placed on the ModGov library in lieu of that report coming forward. With the resumption of PGA as a virtual committee, the briefing note is now brought forward as Appendix A to this report. The report outlines the current work underway and highlights the introduction of a new Section 106 reporting requirement from December 2020. The infrastructure funding statement will cover the first return period from the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020, and it will be repeated annually after that, being due for the first time on the 31st of December 2020. As Mr. Andrews outlines in his report, he's undertaking reconciliation work at present, and following the latest work is keen to arrange a member seminar for all members in August or September to go through the detail of the agreements and the status of the projects. That will follow his comprehensive review of the Council's existing spreadsheets and the necessary monitoring visits to ensure that all the records are up to date. Obviously, there's been an issue at the moment in some of those visits that he's not been able to do throughout the COVID emergency period. Following that seminar, we will also bring a report to this meeting towards the end of the year to present the infrastructure funding statement prior to submission ahead of the end of the year deadline. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So, members, you will note that we're going to have this seminar, which is all members. So I don't know if there's any particular questions that members would like to ask, but you're very happy to do so if there is anything. Anyone, Berna?
Yes, Councillor Stamp would like to ask a question. No, sorry, Councillor Mays, we have first.
Councillor Mays.
Yes.
Is Councillor Mays on this committee?
Oh, she's come back and said here. Sorry, it's actually Councillor Stamp who's asking.
Councillor Stamp. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Could Mr. Dobson, I nearly called you the lovely Mr. Dobson, then I remembered my place. I'm terribly sorry. Could Mr. Dobson tell us when we're actually going to have a working group to do with this, or is it not on this committee? It's going to be SIL. Are they not going to be along in tandem, Mr. Dobson? I can't hear you. I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'd muted whilst the questions were coming. Yes, the SIL working group has now been established, but hasn't met yet. At present, the SIL work there's some work going on commissioned around the infrastructure requirement statement and also around the viability work. There are two pieces of work that need to be put together, and then they will go to the working group to discuss those as soon as they come back. We wouldn't normally take the Section 106 through that working group. It has been established for the SIL specifically, but obviously we're keen to update members on the latest position with Section 106 through that all-member seminar.
Because, Chairman, we wouldn't want to duplicate work, would we? You know, because it's two separate groups. If it's very similar, it would help. But I'd like to say thank you for. I've never met the gentleman, but hopefully we will start to move in the right direction of 106s, because we're all keen to get our fair share in our communities of what we're entitled to, because I appreciate we're at different stages of builds, but sadly some of us have been surrounded by building noise and it seems like 5 years, even though it's most probably 3 years, and it'd be nice for the communities to get some benefit back. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr Dodson, I take it the SIL working group will report to council and not this committee? Is that right?
That's correct, Chairman, as it was appointed by council.
Yeah, correct. Thank you. Any other members? Benna?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Skeens would like to ask a question.
Councillor Skeens, please.
Yes, I mean, as just reiterating really what Councillor Stamp said, and my concern that time is passing, and I mean, I've had discussions with officers that seem to be years old now about various facilities that were going to be brought here by 106 and now maybe by SIL. I'm worried about the confusion between SIL and 106, and I'm worried that things might have started falling off the list. And I'm looking for reassurance that everything that was promised, even though the years have been passing, and I understand transformation and then COVID-19 has interrupted, but all those things will actually be delivered. And maybe there may be a case, since so much time has passed, for reviewing a number of the opportunities. It may be things have changed.
Thank you. Mr Dodson, do you want to comment at all?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the infrastructure delivery plan outlines the delivery elements of the Section 106, and that's something that's a statutory document that will be reviewed to look at whether things have changed. But that the Section 106 funding directly delivers projects that address the impact of development, and the SIL will be able to bring forward a wider range of projects that reflect the broader development, but not necessarily a direct impact of each site. It's much more flexible in how it can be addressed. So we're very keen to bring that forward. But yes, the seminar that we hold in August will cover the infrastructure delivery plan and the items that were included on there, so that members can see where we are in terms of progressing the delivery of all of those.
Thank you. Any other member, Benna?
Yes, Councillor Stamp would like to ask another question.
Councillor Stamp?
Just a quick one, please, Mr Dodson. It won't be at the expense of things that's already been agreed under the Section 106, will it? So when we have the meeting and the training session in August, talking about the legal agreements, they will still stand, won't they? So, for example, Councillor Skeens was mentioning things in Burnham on Crouch. We'd actually asked for funding towards a BMX park behind the marina. Now, he did a heck of a lot of work, and we actually put a lot in as well. So we are really, really looking forward to have that money in that facility. Now, that was agreed before the transformation. And we as councillors are, and I think this is what Councillor Skeens was alluding to, we're concerned we're going to be losing out if you're now going to try and change to incorporate the SIL as well. Could you reassure us that we are going to get what we've been promised before?
The SIL shouldn't impact at all on the infrastructure delivery plan that's already set out for Section 106. And as I said, those items within there are directly related to the delivery of the housing that's in the LDP. So there's absolutely no reason why that should change, and you shouldn't. Those projects shouldn't be delivered.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any other member, Benna?
Yes, Councillor Swain has a question, Chairman.
Councillor Swain? Councillor Swain?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. In the first place, although we've got the seminars coming up, I wonder whether there can be some clarification of the relationship between the infrastructure delivery plan and the infrastructure funding statement. Secondly, is this an area for strategy and resources rather than PGA, or is it really for full council? And lastly, the write-up for this talks about a narrative for the infrastructure funding statement. Yet surely we need to have detailed of what is included and how they are funded. Because if we have to come up with a funding gap, then we need to know where the money's come from and what we are hoping to put it towards. It's a question of how much detail will go into these statements, or rather we just have general overarching, not very helpful comments.
Well, if I may, Councillor Swain, as far as this committee is concerned, we are about performance. So the section 106 was about how we were performing in delivering the items that were under that section 106. The funding and this financial statement will go to council, I guess, as will the seminar be for all members. Is that correct, Mr. Dodson? Mr. Dodson?
Yes. I'm sorry, I was just switching on. Yes, the seminar, as you say, will be for all members, Chairman. I don't believe the infrastructure funding statement requires council sign off as such. So it could come here in terms of reporting. It will be reporting on the performance, in effect. That's what the funding statement is. It's a statement to government regarding the delivery of the infrastructure delivery plan. So it would be appropriate for it to come here.
It's just that it is termed infrastructure financial statement. That's the confusion, I think.
Yes, I think that's how it's described, but it is about the delivery of Section 106 projects.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Are you clear on that, Councillor Swain?
I shall await the seminars.
Good. Okay. All right. Any other member, Berna?
No, that concludes the questions, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, members, we will move to the recommendations, 3 little recommendations. So we know the infrastructure financial statement is going to come back to this committee, and the seminar will be for all members. So we're just really noting those and the briefing report. So may I have a seconder to those 3 little recommendations? Can you put your video on?
Second those.
Happy to second.
Sorry. I think we've got various seconds.
How many?
I've got my face on the screen.
Okay, Councillor Channer, I'm taking as the seconder. Thank you very much.
Okay, all members happy with that?
Yes,
agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, so thank you very much. So we move on then to item 11, which is any other items of business the Chairman decides are urgent. I'd be pleased to know that I have none. So at whatever time it is, and I don't have a clock.
3:02.
15:02, we're going to close the meeting. So if you make sure you go out of the meeting, don't go into chat and talk. And thank you so very much, everyone.
Thank
you. Especially to all the
Thank you very much.
especially to all the officers that have attended and to all the hard work that they've done.